Well, welcome everyone here again for another Real Talk episode. My name is Evan Swanson with Guild Mortgage, and I'm excited to bring you today a very passionate real estate leader here in the Portland market. It's a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of serving on a few boards and committees with, Eric Hagstette from Inhabit Real Estate. Eric, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Evan. It's my pleasure. I love participating in things like this, especially with guys like you, other leaders in the industry. And so I'm really excited to be here and to jump in.
Right on, man. Well, as you know, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is better understanding how people's backgrounds influence where they're at today and how they engage their customers. So take us back before real estate. I know I read online that you were working for a Fortune 300 company. What were you doing before getting into real estate?
Good question. And I love telling this story. So my wife and I moved to Portland from Atlanta, Georgia in 1999.
Okay.
And I took a non-traditional route to finish my college undergraduate degree and actually have a unique degree, which is marketing and professional sales. And
Okay.
so I had no experience whatsoever, but I did have this degree, and we relocated to Portland. And I really thought I deserved this like flashy, sexy sales job that would probably take tons of years to earn. And so I came out to Portland and I had a resume and I had some cheap suits. And I went out and I got a job with a payroll and human resource provider. And I didn't really have any clue what I was doing. I was given a territory. I was told to go out there and make sales. I was given these really, really high, what seemed like unachievable quotas. And I was working for a New York-based company that allowed no excuses. And how that translated into my future career in real estate is that I was given a recipe that I was told worked and would be successful just as long as you implement the recipe and don't give up.
Sure.
And lo and behold, I took what was their worst territory. I took the formula or the recipe, I put it to work. I really felt like I had something to prove because I was a little behind the eight ball in getting into my career. And so that's when I learned the importance of consistency and following the formula and not giving up. So I spent about 5 years with Paychex, who does a lot of payroll and
Sure.
human resource processing for lots of companies, and cut my teeth there before jumping into real estate in 2004.
Okay. Cool. So business to business sales was your background.
Yep, exactly. Calling on small businesses, just like our company, just like your company, 1 to 25 employees. And that was actually the biggest blessing I could have ever imagined because I got to know Portland. I got to know the people. And what also another lesson I took from that is that what I did was I called on CPAs, bankers, and attorneys on
Okay.
top of cold calling clients. But those were my referral sources, right? And so I would call on those professionals for their referrals. And when it came time to make the leap into real estate, I went to those people I had been calling on for 5 years. And I told them what I was doing, and I was really nervous about it. But what was so profound to me is that they trusted me with their referrals in, say, career A, and that trust carried over into career B.
Sure.
And that was very powerful to me. And that goes to show, I mean, that's just the same thing we work on today. The
Absolutely.
foundation of our work is trust, right?
Yeah,
So,
relationships and trust are 1,000% what drives this business for sure. So,
yep.
um, just out of curiosity, when you were getting going in that work, I assume, I mean, were you like cold calling these companies and like offering services? Was that sort of the formula that Paychex handed down?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I was cold calling any business. I mean, I've got hilarious stories because my first territory was like Hillsborough to the coast.
Okay.
I mean, they gave that to the new guy, right? Who had no
Sure.
experience. And they were like, we'll see if it works.
So you
And
could have
so
anything from like Intel or a tech company to a dairy or a
to,
farmer in that
to,
regard.
to timber, to timber companies, to
Yeah.
mills. I mean, I had a wasabi farmer out in Gales Creek who was growing wasabi root. It was really interesting. But yeah, so I was calling on the end user, trying to sell them the benefits of the efficiency and the peace of mind of hiring us. And then, yeah, I was calling on the CPAs, bankers, and attorneys, which is kind of a tough call to make. I mean, those, God bless them, but they're not oozing with personality, that
Right.
crew.
Right.
And so breaking through to them to get them to trust me was a bit of a tall order, but we got it done.
How many calls were you making a day when you started?
Good question. And that I would just share with you that, and I actually had a Rolodex, right? And the old classic.
A literal Rolodex.
Yeah, and the
That's
tickler file. This was kind of pre CRM, like
sure.
Salesforce was just getting out into the marketplace, and we were using a tickler file.
Yeah.
And you'd write a note, call back in 6 months, then 6 months later, you go get that and call them back. But our quotas would range anywhere throughout the year. They were seasonally adjusted or month to month adjusted. And our quotas would range anywhere from like 10 new clients a month to upwards of 25 to 30, like in January, the big start of the year.
Sure.
And so, and I hear this in real estate, and I hear it all over. Portland's different. Our market is different. It's sleepy. It's this, it's that. It's not the same as the rest of the country. But when I took that to my manager, New York-based manager, I'd be like, Portland's sleepy. They'd say, go, keep going, put your head down. And so that's when, Portland is a different market, but it's just about consistency, right? And continuing to work.
So as you were beginning to have some growth and some success in that space, what drew you into real estate?
So I always had a fascination with real estate. When I was little, my mom and dad, primarily my dad, was working on rental houses. He had rentals. And this was in Atlanta, and this was when, I mean, he had rentals in rough neighborhoods.
Uh-huh.
And he would take me with him to do not an eviction, but like a turnover or to reclaim a house that somebody had moved out of. And I was really getting a feel for what that was like. And what I liked about it was that you could actually go physically touch it, work on it, improve it, fix it, enhance it. And so I always remembered how important that felt to me, and also providing people home and shelter, right? Even when I was a little guy, I was like, wow, my dad's got rental houses and he's giving other people a place to live. And so fast forward, I marry my better half, which we just celebrated our 25th anniversary last week.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. And Kim, my wife, who helps me run this brokerage also, is a dynamite award-winning interior designer.
Cool.
And by trade. So she got an interior architecture degree from the University of Georgia, and is so talented. And so before I roped her into real estate, she was designing spaces.
Cool.
And so we had this vision, and we're like, one day we're going to have a shop that does real estate services, interior design, and marketing. And because I had the marketing degree.
Sure.
And so we had this concept that we were dreaming about that hadn't really been created yet. And so that after 5 years of working for the man, so to speak, at Paychex, I got my license. And this was back when pro schools, you'd go and sit in the classroom at pro schools and learn from you basically learn how to pass the test. And so I did that. I got my license, and I kind of moonlighted because I knew at that point for the corporate job, the sales job, I knew the recipe, right? I was still plugging the recipe in and I was still getting the results out. But I had a new dream and a new passion, and I was kind of, for about 6 months, kind of moonlighting, for lack of better words. And then I went to my boss, who had really helped me, unbelievably supported me. And I said to him, hey, I'm going to be moving on. And it was very emotional and it's very hard to do. And he put his arm around me. He's like, Eric, you're going to have success no matter what. I'm proud of you. We've done great together. We work together. So good luck, high five. And that's when I took myself a hard copy of my license, my cheap corporate suit, including a tie. And I knew I wanted to work for Eva Sanders. I don't know if you know Eva or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
legend in the
so,
Portland real estate market. Great gal.
absolutely. So Eva had just opened up the East Side office for the Meadows Group,
I remember. Yeah.
and I'm an East Side guy. And so my dear friend who I worked with at Paychex, he said, "You got to know this Eva woman. She was our realtor. She's dynamite." And, it was just like a really tried and true testimonial and referral coming from this person. And so I walked into Meadows Group with my suit on and my license and my resume. And I said, I'd like to work here. I just passed the test. And they said, well, we don't really hire new people. We're an established company and we only hire people with, X years of experience. And I said,
Sure.
I get that, but please, can you take a chance on me? Can we sit down and talk about my plan? And I already wrote out a business plan and was ready to go. And then I was sitting there with Heather Adams, Tammy House, and Eva Sanders at the table, and I closed them. And it wasn't cheesy or anything, but they gave me the courtesy of a meeting, and I just had so much fire and passion about being in the real estate game. And so they said, you know what, we're going for it. And we shook hands and off we went. And
One of
so
the best, one of the best hires they ever made. And knowing you and seeing you in other settings, I know you're a guy that has a lot of passion. You have a lot of fire and intensity, and that serves you well, right? That serves you well in those situations. So that's awesome. There's so
yeah,
much there you just covered. Well, I wanted to go back to the relationship with you and your dad. Your dad had owned rental homes in the Atlanta area. He would drag you along in going to some of these homes and reclaiming them and turning them over and all that stuff. And you kind of touched on it, but how did that influence your not so much the business of real estate, but the emotion of business that or of real estate, that sense of home for a family?
yeah. Well, that I appreciate you asking that, because that's really been my passion, and something that's I've held so dear in my work in real estate is the importance of home as our safe haven, right? I don't care if you're a renter or owner, it's having somewhere to go at the end of the day to where you can unwind, let loose, put your feet up, regroup, and go out and face the world the next day. And the stability of that, because I saw instability with my dad in terms of the turnover. I mean, we'd go into some of his houses and people would have stolen the plumbing out of them, like the copper, or change the oil from their motorcycle. And so he had, I would never say slumlord, but he, to get in the game there, he was buying lower end houses and trying to make it work. And so I saw the instability associated with home and people turning over houses.
Mm-hmm.
And then I compared that to my upbringing, which was I'm very thankful to have been brought up in a stable home environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so in today's world, I mean, I've been a licensee for 20 years, and but especially in the last, say, 5, when things really changed up in the world for us, the importance of having some stability and having accessibility has really been really driving me. And yes, I remember that from a young guy, and being thankful for some semblance of stability and the feeling of safety, right? And having a place to go to. And so that's really at the root of my work. And so yeah.
I love that, man. And I can totally relate. I had the blessing of being raised in a household that was stable, and I had extremely supportive parents. And my mom was actually a realtor as well. So I had some
Oh,
exposure early on. But to your point, when I see some of the ills of the world and some of the symptoms of instability, I can't help but wonder how our society would function if everyone was offered that stability early on in their life. And when I think about, and I know some of the many of the things that you advocate for um, are not related to the business function of being a real estate professional, but for the true passion of wanting to promote stability and home to our community. So that's awesome.
yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
so you worked for Eva at Meadows for a few years, and then another huge milestone in your career was founding Inhabit Real Estate. And Inhabit Real Estate is a local boutique real estate firm based here in Portland that you found. What was the motivation to get that going?
All right. So yeah, I worked for Eva and at the Meadows Group for 10 years, and we had a great run, right?
Yep.
Great run. And that's where I actually learned how to sell. I
Mhm.
learned the importance, especially if anybody knows Eva, the importance of telling it straight, cutting to the chase, no BS real estate,
Mhm.
right? And because I would go to her with problems and she'd be like, get it together, she'd like keep me in mind.
I hope she watches this. I hope she watches this conversation.
Listen, to this day, I still consider her my mentor and I hold her so dear to me. And her work at the industry level is so impactful to me. And that's why I'm working with you at PMAR and other places because I love this industry. And she actually helped me. One of the biggest achievements at the Meadows Group was she helped me land my first condominium project,
Okay.
which was 27 units right down the street from us here at 26 in Division.
Cool. Awesome.
So,
Yeah.
and that was a big eye-opening experience because that taught me how to scale business through multi-unit developments, right? And how if I could do it, anybody could do it. So I actually have a course now and I teach and train our brokers here. And I'm launching some education on how to work with builders and developers. But that was where I cut my teeth with that. And that was huge for me. I mean, having 27 units on one corner, 27 condo homes, I should
Sure.
say,
Yeah.
and being able to service those rather than 27 listings around town, right? I go to one corner, I got one developer seller. I've got, all that comes with that. So I learned so much working at Meadows Group. I also learned the power of branding. Since then, Meadows Group sold to John L. Scott, a great merger or acquisition or whatever it was. But when I was at Met, and so our office at Meadows Group is in the heart of Southeast Portland.
Mhm.
But if you recall, it was a Tigard-based company, and the
Yeah.
feeling and the flavor is different from Tigard to Inner East.
Absolutely.
One thing that they didn't change was our branding package.
Mm.
So I'm flying a purple flag, a purple sign with gold foil.
Hmm.
That was the Meadows branding package.
Hmm.
And same with my business card and everything else. And so there's a lot of layers to that conversation. I won't get too in the weeds with it, but at the time, it was myself and two other players at Meadows Group who had the market share in Southeast Portland.
Hmm.
But those two other people had sub brands. That's when sub branding in the real estate space
Sure.
started
Yeah, I
taking
remember
off.
that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm. And this was Diane Ingalls and Celia Lyon, and they had different signage. But we were still Meadows Group, but they
Mhm.
had a full different branding suite. And I was sitting there, and for one, I was like, you know what? Nobody else has a purple and gold sign. I'm going with that.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it, but I'm going with it.
Sure. It's unique.
And yeah, and you can
Memorable.
see it. You can
Yeah.
see it in the field. And so, but I started, I took, in a nutshell, I took the best practices and the high level of client service, and I paired it with my own desire to create a brand that speaks to and resonates with this market
Hmm.
and that feels authentic and it feels adaptable to any particular market segment, whether it be first timers, luxury, development, anything. And that's when Inhabit was born. And so because I knew Meadows would allow me to sub brand,
Hmm.
I had spent upwards of a year working with a branding company intentionally outside of the real estate space, right? I didn't want to work with real estate branding companies.
Sure.
So we went out and hired a company that I could normally never afford, but they had not worked in real estate before. And they're like, hey, if you allow us, if you will be a case study for us, we'll essentially cut our fees in half and we'll brand you and you can just we'll be able to watch how it goes. And
What a great opportunity.
yeah, it was cool. It was so cool. So we did all this creative deep diving with this branding company, and they really found out who I was and what my messaging was and who I really didn't want to omit. Right. That
Hmm.
was so important for branding is
Mm.
who do you not want to leave out? Like we
Hmm.
want to get everybody in the game.
Yeah.
And so one day they revealed they revealed the Inhabit brand package, and it was awesome. And it was so powerful because it embodied the service I wanted to give and the image, the brand experience from the perception level. And it was so strong to me. And that's when I realized, in many different ways, many light bulbs went off. And I said, it's my time to be an owner and to start my own brokerage and to take this brand and let it stand on its own rather than being a sub brand.
Sure.
And
Very cool.
so, yeah, so to go personal, it was a Friday afternoon. It was in October, and I had been dragging my feet because I didn't want to tell Eva I was leaving.
Sure.
And every year at October, there's these big cyclocross races. I'm a big cyclist and a racer, and there are these big races down in Bend at Halloween.
Okay.
And I knew I couldn't prolong the news any longer, and I was going to Bend that afternoon. And I dragged myself into Eva's office, and I was so emotional. I was a bloody mess. And I said, Eva, I'm moving on. This breaks my heart. I didn't really want to. I was scared, right? I was excited, but I was scared. And just like my sales manager from Paycheck, she gave me a big hug and she said, you're going to be awesome. This is awesome. I've loved working with you, and I hope we can maintain our relationship. And so off I went.
Amazing. And what year was that?
I was in end of 2013.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And,
Yeah.
and again, just speaks to the class of Eva as well, right? I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all. Losing one of her top producers, but focusing on you and your future success is
Oh, yeah.
telling of who she is as well.
Oh, it taught me so much. And as hard as it is, broker turnover is kind of the nature of the business in some cases. And so, yeah, you want what's good for your brokers, right? And she wanted that for me. So I left and I got in the car with my cycling buddies, and I was just so melancholy and bummed out all weekend. But anyway, off we went. Yeah, and we signed this. We're on Division Street, and we're still here 10 years later, and it's been a killer run.
That's awesome. Well, as a guy that attended Hostford Middle School, to see the redevelopment of Division is so amazing. It's such an incredible asset to that area, and so many cool businesses and buildings and all that. So I didn't realize you were involved in the redevelopment of that street, but it's beautiful. Well done.
Yeah, it's fun to work here. Every so often we wish we just had a non-award-winning restaurant, like a sandwich shop or something, but it's a cool place to live. And it was really important for me to be storefront because I wanted to connect with the community, right? I wanted the community to feel like we were a resource, whether they're buying, selling, or just had a question. And that's proven successful because we have neighbors come in. They just run things by us. And we work for them, but they also will come in with just a question or to chew the fat or whatever. Sure. So, yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us about Inhabit a little bit. That was awesome to kind of understand how the idea came together, but talk about the ethos of Inhabit and what makes Inhabit different from other real estate brokerages around town.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I'm happy to answer that question. So we've always, like I was taught in the beginning, I've always based this company on teaching and training. Mm-hmm. And that isn't necessarily to say we're a new agent company. That's teaching a better way, teaching a better message, avoiding pitfalls, avoiding risk, and then leveling up on polish, right? And professionalism. So my mom taught school for 40 years. My brother is PhD professor, curator at University of South Carolina. My dad, after his stint in rentals, he was always with Delta Airlines, and he was a teacher and trainer there. It's in my blood, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so I'd say that our brokers here are some of the best trained, best prepared agents in the marketplace. We're small but mighty. We claim strong niche presence in luxury real estate and also in new construction and development from my early days at Meadows Group. So we've continued doing projects and teaching and training our realtors how to, the importance of and the confidence of working with developers and adding housing units to the market. And so And we also provide an immense amount of marketing support. And we've taken all of that off of our brokers' hands, because not only do we want to preserve our branding, but we want to, like, it's just in service to our brokers, right?
Sure.
Keeping them
Yeah.
busy, keeping in the field. And so we have a really good time working here. We have an office on Division Street. We have an office at the 937 building in the Pearl on Gleason Street. And we're also licensed in Vancouver, in Washington as well. And so it's, like, I'll be honest with you, Evan, if it was just my goal to be unbelievably profitable and wealthy, this is going to sound weird, I would have just kept selling, right?
Sure.
I would have just kept selling, but I had a calling to lead. And it really is something deep within me that just really scratches the itch, so to speak, and working and helping with brokers and helping my brokers or our brokers, and helping them like realize the amazing potential of this career.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
teaching, and really more than anything, is teaching them confidence, because it's not rocket science. It's facilitating sales, looking for win-win situations. And so teaching confidence is something we do here, because like I said earlier, if I could land that project, anybody could land a project. And another point of differentiation is, because of my sales background in corporate America and the no excuse mentality, we teach the simple fundamentals of like a pipeline concept, filling the pipeline, filling the
Sure.
funnel. And we
I'm
help
glad you
our,
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the one thing I wanted to highlight, is just based on going back to your initial kind of, professional career in working for paychecks and having the formula and the plan, and then taking that to Meadows and executing the plan. There's an element of consistency there that I think is lacking industry wide. So is it fair to say that there's a sense of accountability, a sense of encouragement to have a plan and stick to it?
Absolutely. I mean, we don't give quotas. Like when I onboard an agent, whether they're new or existing, it is almost mandatory for me to sit with them and build a business plan. And that's how I started. I mean, I didn't have anybody to do that at Meadows Group. Eva would have done it. I had already done it. And I keep my business plans really simple. And so in the beginning, when I was a brand new agent, I just said, I want to sell. And this was back when our average price was like 290, right? Average sales price in Portland. I want to sell $1 million of volume a month. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if it's a buyer. I don't care if it's a seller, but I want $1 million in volume a month. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do open houses. I'm going to tap my existing sphere. I'm going to prospect. I'm going to do some events, and I'm going to put myself out there. And it worked. And it worked, and I couldn't believe it. And so now when I bring on somebody new, I say to them, how much money do you want to make on a take-home basis? How much do you want to take home? And then we build a plan on that. So our realtors who work here their plan is unique to them. And because they're 1099s, like if they want accountability, they'll get it from me. But it's also a different environment, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't micromanage them, but I do watch for the drift. And I know it happens oh so often in our business. I can observe when somebody may be drifting off course, right?
I love that term for sure.
And because we're a small company, I know what everybody's doing. And so I know when to put my arm around somebody and check in on them, see how they're going, see if they want to review their plan or if something needs tweaking or whatnot. But in the end, it's very important that realtors getting in the business or existing realtors recognize this is a sales job. And it's not that a lot. I'm not saying it's a salesy job. It's a sales job.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's very important for realtors to understand that consistency is key. The money is in the follow-up, and working the recipe that's proven is critically important and not that hard to do. In today's day and age, we all have kind of short attention spans and we want quick results, but this is a long burn, right?
Totally.
And I also ensure that the realtors we bring on board are prepared to start their own business. And the metaphor I use is, hey, if you were starting a coffee cart, you got to buy the beans. You got to be ready. And are you prepared? Did you save money for this? Because it's no different. It looks different. It looks like you're working at a company and you know, you're going to be given support and all that, and you are, but you got to have a long game mentality. And so those are some of the checkpoints that I make sure to touch on with our realtors. And in the end, it's like the sales piece of it is just filling the funnel, daily activity and daily activity. Keep plugging it in, keep throwing it against the wall, and then it'll start coming. As long as you're consistent with it and doing things that we know will work, that's, you know, then the results come. And that's kind of the feeling and the attitude of what happens here at Inhabit. So
I love that. I love that. You've got teaching and coaching in your DNA, and the support you offer to the realtors in your office is focused on consistently filling the tasks or the activities which are going to fill that pipeline.
yep.
That's awesome. And just the way you articulate that tells me that that's just a core piece of who you are. I know another core piece of who you are is one thing that makes you unique in the real estate space is that you have competency working with housing providers,
Yep.
developers, builders, in increasing the supply of housing in our marketplace. And I also know you to be very passionate on the concept of housing affordability. And you know, as a person that grew up here, and I remember again my mom being a realtor. So in high school, this is in the mid to early '90s, flipping through the Sunday paper with her, having my cereal and looking at the open houses. And I remember houses being for sale for 39,000, 59,000. And of course, now we're 10x that in terms of
Right.
median price point. Portland, unfortunately, has lost that affordable categorization. So, Eric, speak a little bit about your passion around housing affordability and housing supply. And I know that you've been a local leader in voice from the industry to you know, local leadership and commissions and whatnot. But I know it's a passion of yours. So help us understand how you, through your activity, are helping to promote housing supply and affordability in our market.
Okay. Yeah. Big. This is a big
Yeah,
conversation, and I'll try and
30
keep it
seconds. Go.
succinct.
No, just kidding.
Um, all right. So over my career, I have created a niche business of finding underutilized land, pitching it to developers whom I've built relationships with, consulting with them on what the highest and best use of that land is, and then delivering the product to the market a couple years later. It's fascinating, like beginning to end, taking it from dirt to homes.
And it's a long process.
It is a long process, but it's very rewarding. A lot comes from that. It adds to the resale business of my resale business. For, you know, I'll spare you the details, but it ripples out in very positive ways. And so, and I've delivered, I don't know, hundreds of new homes into the Portland market, many of which are urban infill, and you'd recognize a lot of our projects. And so that system was just going swimmingly until we started running into some obstacles in Portland Metro. And I started noticing my developers were leaving the building, right? I would be seeing awesome pieces of land and I'd bring them to them. I say, hey, check this out. I think we could build, you know, 15 homes here, 15 townhouses, sell them for on average, I don't know, 450. It's great urban environment, great walkable neighborhood. And this is a no-brainer. You can have the land for this much, and I know it pencils out for you. And the developers started saying, you know what, Eric, I'm done with City of Portland and Multnomah County. You know, the process of obtaining permitting, the costs associated with it, and a lot of the secondary struggles are becoming too much for me. I'm taking my development work to Clackamas County or to Washington County or to Clark County or to Boise or to anywhere else.
Right.
And so all of a sudden I had nobody doing business in, and I started looking, and all of a sudden I noticed there were no cranes downtown, right? Sometimes you go to a city, you see cranes everywhere. That's a sign of progress. That's a sign of development. And so I started looking into this, and realizing that the, for lack of better words, the brain damage or the tape associated with creating housing here was so challenging and so insurmountable that it stopped. And then we had inclusionary zoning that came in, and it meant well, but it also scared developers out of the region. And we all of a sudden, I looked, and statistically showing we almost drew a line in the sand for development in town.
Sure.
And so even though in my world, I'm paid to broker sales, this was happening for apartment housing, affordable housing, market rate housing, and sale housing. And I started really getting worried about this, because when we hit the break, we were already at a deficit, right? Urban growth boundary is a beautiful thing, especially coming from Atlanta, where there's no end. It just sprawls and sprawls and sprawls. But here, we love the urban growth boundary, but it has always put us in a deficit for housing units, statistically speaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we have a challenging building environment. And so I really started looking into it and realizing that if we don't jump on this and start squeaky wheel, then it's only going to get worse and worse. And the result of that is housing then becomes a luxury that's only achievable, accessible to a small segment of the population, whether you're renting or buying.
Yeah.
And so that
Like San
began to really,
Francisco, like the Bay Area.
exactly. So that began to really worry me. And that's when I began working with Michelle Gila, Director of Advocacy at PMAR, and leveraging the PMAR platform as a better place to raise my voice. And so in the last, I don't know, 18 months, I've been in front of the mayor and city council, and I've been doing anything I can to ask questions or to raise voice and concern about why is it so hard to build here? What are these obstacles to housing production? Why does a developer have to put bird safe glazing in? Why does a developer mandated or required to put eco roofs on a building? Why do we have to do these things when these residents don't demand these things?
Right.
And so, so we've been fighting little battles and winning some and losing some, but in the end, and I'll tell you this, a former commissioner that I will not mention their name, and she said to us, we were testifying one day in front of city council, and she insinuated that the brokers want escalating unachievable pricing, that's good for our business. We get paid more for the big prices. And that to me was such an eye-opening statement to think and to see that was the perception of us. And so I've tried to elevate my role from, I still love brokering houses, but if we don't start getting involved at an industry level and fighting for housing production, all brokers will have a tiny market to work off of.
Yeah.
And only serving a select few that can, right now to get in the inner Southeast Portland market, the first timers are paying $700,000, $650, whatever. And if it's less than that, then they're going to be working on that house or dumping hundreds of thousands into it. And so when I bought my first house in '99 in Mount Tabor, it was a big craftsman home for $185,000. And I was freaking out back then, that was a lot of money. I was coming from Atlanta, where that amount of money in Atlanta would get you a brick house with a pool. And so here I'm buying this old craftsman house for 185. But now I look at this, only select people who can qualify, especially on the financing side. You've got to make so much to qualify for that. And then you can't have additional debt. And then you have student loan debt, you got car debt, you got everything else. And so it's a no-win situation if we don't get ahead of it and fight. And so that's why my message to all of my realtor friends is get out of the sale, get your head out of the sale. I know we get paid for that, and don't stop doing it, but get your head in a different place and position yourself as a professional in housing, as an authority. We're selling lifestyle here. And right now, Portland's undergoing lifestyle challenges. And so there's no better person in my mind to be fighting this battle than the realtor community. We saw it at PMAR last week when we met. We have 7,500 members on PMAR. That's a big group of people. And so collectively, I think we should be really raising our voices to push for change when it comes to housing production. That's all I'll say.
I love that, man. And this is why I have so much respect for who you are, is because you are serving a greater good, right? And I think most talented and successful people in our industry, be it on the real estate side or even the mortgage side, we're not looking to make transactions for ourselves. We're looking at the market and saying, how can I serve the market? How can I serve my community? How can I serve this individual household? And I'm going to put every bit of passion and heart I can into that. And if the answer is no, I don't, there's no solutions I have, then we have to professionally say, hey, I'm not a good fit, but here are some ideas to help solve your problems.
Exactly.
So, Eric, I just want to say thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy, and I know that you have all these passions and that you're very driven. So thank you for spending time with me here today. More than that, thank you for your leadership, both in your company, in the industry, and in our community to make that lifestyle better for all of us, man. I have a lot of admiration for you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, Evan, it's been my pleasure. I could talk for hours on this stuff. If anybody out there listening wants to talk shop about housing, about real estate, I mean, I consider myself a broker's broker. I don't care if you work here or anywhere else. I love the brokerage community. I think our work is so meaningful. It's way more than just the sale. It's about what we're doing, just like you said. It's about serving the greater good. And so being able to talk with you today has been my pleasure. I really appreciate you having me.
So, Eric, how can people get a hold of you?
Easy. We are at, excuse me, I should know that. Folks can look me up at inhabitre.com. I'm on the roster there. And also at Eric Hagstette on Instagram. I'm easy to find. You can walk in either one of our stores on Division 3121 Southeast Division or 937 Northwest Gleason. Come in, bend our ear, have a cup of coffee, sit in our meetings, participate. You don't have to be one of us. We like working collectively, and it's our pleasure to be a part and a resource for the brokerage community.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much, man. You're a stud. Enjoyed talking to you. And until next time.
Thank you, Evan. It's been a pleasure.